Thank you. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. So, yeah, 10 minutes. Let's go. Lego Serious Play is something that I got involved in first about 3 or 4 years ago. And it's one of those areas that if you told me a few years ago that as part of my librarianship I would be throwing small plastic bricks at students and get them to building things, I probably wouldn't have gone for it, wouldn't have believed you. My first exposure to this was in a day's training with a man called Andrew Walsh. It was over in Cambridge, and it was one of those sort of training experiences where, on the train going home, my head was just buzzing with things that I could possibly do with it. Let me explain very quickly what Lego Serious Play is, and then I want to go on and try and give you a sense of what I do with it at Middlesex, because I kind of have these two roles now. I am still a subject librarian for both law and natural sciences, but in becoming a Lego Serious Play practitioner, I've also taken this kind of slight diversion. The two roles sort of sit alongside each other. And because of the reputation I've now got at Middlesex as the man that gets paid to play with Lego, I also get to support students and staff in all these other areas as well. So it's been quite an amazing development, and something that's been absolutely wonderful to be able to sort of experience and take part with. So the origins of Lego Serious Play started as an internal tool with Lego themselves back in the early to mid 90s. The company were of the opinion that they were in a creative rut, which is kind of hard to imagine now considering how successful and dominant they are, but that was their opinion back then. So they came up with this methodology originally as a way to come up with new creative ideas for the product, but also as a business tool. They wanted to develop a technique, to develop a model whereby every person in a meeting was heard. They wanted to develop an idea that, if not equal, everyone at least had a chance to invest in an idea and become part of that idea. And then about sort of 10, 12 years later, they open sourced the sort of the methodology, the design. And that's when it started to sort of spread outside Lego, and it's now, I think it's now, you know, it is pretty popular now, and you come across it in training courses and in sort of the business community in general on a fairly regular basis. So the central principles of Lego Serious Play. The central principles involve everyone's experiences being valid. The way this works with students and staff, I'll come on to in a few minutes. I just want to explain the sort of the principles first. So the subjectivity of experience and learning is considered key in how Lego Serious Play works in a workshop setting. Creativity and metaphors and the fact that as a species we are very good at telling stories are all those elements that are exploited to make Lego Serious Play work. I did a session with natural science students last year, and I used the phrase, we are basically a monkey that tells stories. And I was immediately put right, no, we are an ape that tells stories. So you have to get that kind of thing right when you're dealing with natural science students. We are an ape that tells stories. And one of the other things that I'm keen for students to feel when they are in a Lego Serious Play session is that they own their own ideas. The ownership and the pride of what they make in those sessions is key to the success of a session, certainly in my mind, and I think largely in the students' minds as well. I am, when I did my training course sort of 3 years ago, when I became a qualified Lego Serious Play facilitator, one of the phrases which was repeated throughout the course by the guy running it, an amazing man called Robert Rasmussen, was this phrase, when we build with our hands, we build in our minds. And that's one of the central tenets of the Lego Serious Play philosophy. When you build something physically, when you can see it physically, it becomes more real in your mind as well. And I have many, many examples of when this works with students at all levels, and it is amazing to see it work. I just trust that it will actually work now. I don't doubt that the fact that every student is capable of this. So, very quickly again, the core process, what's known as the core process within Lego Serious Play. There are different rounds of this. You start very simply, but every core process begins with you asking the people present a question. The question can take many different forms, but then you pose the question, and there is then a set amount of time for the participants to build a model to answer that question from their perspective. The time limit is really important. You set a time limit to stop people overthinking it. One of the things I sometimes have to say to students is, if you don't know what to build, just build, because starting is often the hardest part. You then individually share the meaning of the models that you've made. So that's certainly from the facilitator's perspective, that's the bit I certainly find most interesting. Everyone has to share what they've made. You don't get to sit there and say, I've built this, but I can't tell you what it is. So you have to be secure in what you've made in order to be able to share the meaning. And then there's a final round of reflection at the end of each of those kind of sort of circular builds. That core process then gets more and more complex as the session goes on. I have some examples of models. I always start with posing the same question. You start simply and you move into more complex areas. And I always start by saying to students or staff, build a duck. And I know that was one of the things I asked the participants to do today as well. So this is a duck that my youngest son made. This is a duck that I made. This is a duck that my wife made. In the eyes of Lego Serious Play, all these ducks are equally duck-like. Okay? It's about what you've made. It does not have to look anatomically like a duck. It doesn't have to fly. It just has to be your duck. And that's, again, that's reinforcing that first idea that what you make is what matters. What other people think of what you make is largely unimportant. They can question you on what you made, but they can't question the validity of what you've made. The second thing I normally ask people to make is, sometimes I ask them to build a tower, and sometimes I ask them to build a bridge. In this case, I've built 2 bridges. That's one bridge, that's the other bridge, okay? In the eyes of a Lego Serious Play facilitator, these 2 bridges are equally important. It's not a size thing, it's not a complexity thing, it doesn't matter how many bricks you've chosen to use, it's just about, it's your bridge. And what I'd like to do now is go on very quickly to explain some of the theoretical underpinnings of how Lego Serious Play works. It takes things from different areas. It puts them together as a synthesis and creates the design. One of the things it looks into is the idea of a concept that was first written about by a man called Csikszentmihalyi, and it's the concept of flow. The idea of putting people in a flow state when they're working on a problem is very simply, it's the idea that a problem is just hard enough to fully engage them, but not so hard that they feel that they're struggling and bail out. So there's a level, and there's a kind of corridor, this thing called flow, which he wrote about extensively throughout his career. It also plays very, very heavily on different concepts of play and playfulness. And play and playfulness are slightly different ideas, but they clearly interact. And it does suggest very strongly that playfulness is key to how we learn in a very individual and human way. It also exploits some of the science written about in terms of constructionism and constructivism. Constructionism was first written about by a man called Seymour Papert back in the 80s, and constructivism most famously suggested by Piaget originally back in the 50s. But those two things combine together. So what I do at Middlesex with Lego Serious Play depends very much on what lecturers ask of me with a session. But the sessions do have learning outcomes. They do have a remit. They're not just 2, 3, 4 hours of students playing with Lego. I've done all sorts of different lesson plans, and there is always a build plan or lesson plan. I've done sessions where students have had to build their dissertations. They've had to build the ideas behind their dissertations. They've had to build the methodologies as well. I've done sessions with law students which have involved building physical representations of their moot ideas. And that has the added bonus effect of getting them to work in a team, often for the first time. There is a trust aspect to this that develops when they are working together closely using the models. I've also done sessions with politics students where they've had to recreate physical models of the United Nations. They've had to build models involving, they take a country at random, and then they actually build a collective model showing how trade deals are put together, how the actual flow of trade works between both countries and within countries and firms as well. Last year, I also did a session with street law, a conference involving street law at St Mary's in London. And that involved getting 60 lawyers to collectively create a model together. That was probably one of the craziest things I've ever attempted in a lecture theatre, but it was, the people that attended said it was successful, so I was happy to go with that. I think I'm out of time.
You're getting there. Yeah, that's fine. Yes.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Alan. Yesterday we had Liz with the breakout rooms, and obviously this next year for inductions may be going online. Is it something that you're looking to take online, maybe use virtual reality?
At the moment, I'm negotiating with a couple of lecturers on how we can make this virtual. I am very aware of the fact at the moment that this is a, you know, at the moment I'm quite sad at not doing these sessions because they are the most, these are the most satisfying things I've ever done as a librarian. The feedback is almost, I mean, I've never had feedback like this in 20 years of doing library inductions or workshops or lectures. So I do, you know, I don't want to give it up, but I'm very aware of the fact that the methodology as it was taught to me requires people to physically interact in a room. So yeah, I'm looking at the moment on ways that I can make it work online.
Yeah, so more about the physical interaction as well as the building. Yeah, maybe you could put up some of the reading for the participants just so they could look into it themselves. I've
actually got physical books next to me. I was going to wave them into the webcam, but time went so fast. I didn't have time to do that. But yes, I'm very, very happy to put together a short reading list. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. And I'm sure people will get to place themselves onto your sessions next year as well.
I hope so, because last year I couldn't do it because I had a stroke. And this year, obviously, it was this, and I'm absolutely determined at some point I am going to get legal grown-ups in a room and do this with them to show them how it works.
Yeah, well, let's hope we don't have any more global challenges, and we look forward to seeing you next year in Harrogate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.